Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Apex office hours. This session is designed for beginners and to give you an overview of Application Express. My name's David Peake, and I'm the product manager for Application Express or Apex. I've been with Oracle a long time. I actually started in Australia, then moved to New Zealand, and have been in the US for over 20 years now. These days, I'm actually based in Denver, Colorado. So I'll give you the safe harbor statement. Today I'm going to be covering primarily production product, but I may touch on some new features that are coming up in our next release. So if so, you can't make purchasing decisions based on that. So let's get into it. So Application Express or Apex is a low-code database-centric web application development framework. It's designed to be able to build both desktop and mobile web applications very quickly and easily to allow you to visualize and maintain database data. Primarily, you'll be leveraging your SQL skills and also the database capabilities that Apex is built on top of. There's a number of different use cases for Apex, from developing what we call opportunistic or self-service web applications. So you've got an immediate need and you need to build a solution very quickly. Apex is very good at being able to meet those sort of requirements. It's also very good for extending out ERP systems such as EBS and others. And then it's also very useful for doing things like taking Microsoft Access or spreadsheets or Oracle forms and providing them, and moving them across to a web interface. The distinguishing characteristics of Oracle Apex is that it's browser based. So for all of your development, you do it using a web browser. And also for your end users, then all they need to be able to run Apex is a web browser. They don't need any client software installed. All they need is the URL for their application, their user credentials, and they're off and running. When you actually define applications within Apex, then all of those definitions are actually stored as metadata in the Oracle database. And when you actually run the application, it dynamically generates the pages. So it's not doing any sort of file compilation or code generation. Instead, it's generating the pages at runtime. And you'll see how that makes it a very efficient way and very quick way to be able to do iterative development. Also, the page generation is very efficient because of the fact that all of the processing is being done right down in the database where your data lives. So it's much more efficient to actually do all of your data selection and ordering and any sort of other criteria in the database rather than moving all the data up to the middle tier. So one of the key things about Oracle Apex is it's a no-cost feature of the Oracle database. And could I just ask that people turn off their video, please? And as such, it's fully supported, so you can have any number of developers building any number of applications and any number of end users without any additional licensing cost. There is a specialized Oracle support team that handles any service requests that come in regarding Apex, and you utilize that through your standard database maintenance agreement. Application Express or Apex is supported through 11GR2 and above, so 12C, 18C, etc., and with all editions from Enterprise Edition all the way down to Express Edition or XE. It's also included with our Oracle Database Cloud services such as Schema Service, Exadata Express Service, and Database as a Service. The URL here, apex.oracle.com. If you remember nothing else, then just remember that one URL, apex.oracle.com, which is our free evaluation site. It's also where you'll get a lot of information about Apex and also access to things like the presentation that I'm giving today. Apex is very easy to install. It actually comes as part of the Oracle database in most releases. However, the release that's included with the database is older than our most current release. So we always recommend you to go to our download site, download the latest version of Apex, and install that before doing any development. So one of the key things with Application Express is the fact that we provide all of the plumbing for you. So we have pre-built controls for things like security, database interactions, session management, and everything and more, so that you can concentrate on delivering the business, on meeting the business requirements rather than doing low-level coding to manage such complexities of your application. As such, your main focus is on doing development, customizing it, and then delivering out to the customers as quickly as possible. The architecture of Apex is rather simple. You have a browser talking through a mid-tier, which is Oracle REST Data Services, which can be installed in either Oracle WebLogic Server using Jetty or Tomcat. And those requests are then sent through to the database, and all of the processing happens down in the Oracle database where the Apex engine lives, and then it sends a request back through to the mid-tier and back to the browser. So one of the key things is that there's no business logic in the middle tier. It's all happening in the database. One of the key benefits of using Apex in our architecture is that it provides you with a lot of flexibility on where you do your development and where you do your deployment. So I can start by building an application locally on my desktop, and then when I'm finished, I can simply export that application and install it into any other Oracle database, whether it be on-premise or a cloud. Alternatively, I can do development on-premise and then deliver it out to my end users, or in fact, I can do development on-premise and then move it out to a cloud instance to deliver it to my customers or my partners. Or I might, in fact, have a development team, a remote development team, or, for example, a consulting company come in and develop applications for me. And instead of providing them access to your on-premise, you can have them do the development out on the cloud and then move it back on-premise. And so that provides a lot of flexibility on where you're doing your development, where you're doing your deployment. So one of the great things about Oracle Apex is the very active Apex community. And one of the best sites to go to see that is apex.world. There's a lot of, it's a site built by the Apex community for the Apex community. There's a Slack interface, there's the latest news, and then there's also tweets that are coming in. And the Apex community is very active on Twitter. So if you don't have your own Twitter handle, then I suggest you go and sign up and then utilize the Slack interface and be able to read the tweets there as well. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go and actually do demonstration and show you just how easy it is to build applications using Apex. So the first thing I'm going to do is a very simple use case where I have a spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet has some projects, some dates, status, who it's assigned to, and some cost and budgets. So I'm simply going to select all of my spreadsheet and copy that. And then I'm going to go across to my web browser, and I've logged into my application here, and I'm going to go and create my first application. So I'm just going to go create here, and I want to select from a spreadsheet. And I can either copy it from a file or copy and paste. I'm going to use copy and paste, and I'm actually going to paste the data in here. For those of you who want to get going even quicker, then we also provide a number of sample data sets here that you can click on and load those up rather than using your own spreadsheet. But I'm just going to use the one that I had there, and I'm going to click next. And you'll notice that it's already picked up the first row and defined the column headings for me. I need to give this a name, so I'm just going to call it spreadsheet. And it's also defined the data types for me. So based on the first 20 odd rows, you can see that this one here is a column length of 30, this one's 255, these two are dates, and then we have some numbers as well. So everything looks good. I'm going to go and load that spreadsheet, and you'll see that 73 rows are loaded. And then I'm going to go straight into the Create Application Wizard. So I'll give this a name. And I'm going to go across to the appearance here. And today I'm going to use red, and I'll choose a new icon, nice red icon, and this one's got projects in it and what have you. So I'm going to pick this one here as an icon, and then I'm saving those changes. And you'll see that it's already populated some pages for me here. So I'll just go and have a look at what it's done for me by clicking the edit button here. And this is not what it's supposed to show. Let me just try that one more time. That's much better. You'll see that it's actually utilizing that table that I defined called spreadsheet, and it's doing an interactive report on this table. So I can just jump out of here. It's also defined a dashboard with some charts for me. So based on this table, it's doing a count of the projects for the chart 1, chart 2, it's doing a status here and a count on those, etc. Next, we have these features, and these features are very useful for creating an application that's not just a starter application, that has some really useful capabilities that you need for production ready type applications. Things like access control, so you can define administrators, contributors, readers, that sort of thing. Activity reporting, so you can see how people are using the application. There's also a feedback mechanism, so your end users can provide feedback directly to the development team, so they can provide things like enhancement requests, or if they've had an issue, and it's a very valuable way to get that communication going between your end users and your development team. And then things like theme style selection allow you to change the color of the application. There's also a number of advanced settings. You can change authentication and things like that. But I'm just going to click on the create application. So now it's going ahead and creating the application for me. And don't forget, while we're going through this, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. There will be a Q&A session at the end where Mark Zeiss will be asking me those questions, and then I'll be able to answer them for you. So please add any questions as we're going along into the chat, and we'll answer them as we get further down. So now it's actually created this application for me. It's defined a number of pages here. All those from 1000 on are for all those features that we defined. But I'm just going to go ahead and run the application. So I need to log in, and I'm using my user credentials here. We'll just sign in. And you can see that instead of having a spreadsheet, now I have this in a single source of truth that's stored in the Oracle database in that table that I defined. And so I could actually send out this URL to my end users and actually have them starting to maintain data directly in this application rather than sending out an email and getting 20 responses back. It's much easier to send out this URL, have them log in, go in here, and they can go in and very easily edit any of these records. So here's a record here. I can change, for example, the end date on this one. I'll make it say the 18th. I can change the budget or the cost here. I'm going to make the cost much higher. This one ran well over budget for some reason, and apply the changes. And as soon as I apply those changes, you'll see that those details are saved directly to the database. Everybody can now see a single source of truth. So this is the start of an application that used to be a spreadsheet. The next thing I'd like to do is actually go back in to the application builder, and what I would like to do now is create a new page. So, well, in fact, sorry, before I do that, in the next version, we've actually changed the default, so this will actually show dates, but here it's showing 12 days ago, 11 days ago. And so I'm going to go down the bottom here, and because of the fact, sorry, 1 second, just got to get that out of the way, and I'll change that so it doesn't auto hide. Because of the fact that we ran this from the development environment, we have this developer toolbar. Your end users won't see this developer toolbar, only developers see it, but it allows me to very quickly and easily jump directly into the page I was on, or in fact, I can click on quick edit here. And then if I go up and highlight the column I want to change, for example, start date, then this takes me into what's called Page Designer. And this is where you'll spend the majority of your time. Within Page Designer, it's broken up into 3 major panes. In the left pane is the rendering tree, where you can see all of your components on the page. Next is what we call dynamic actions, which I'll go through in a little bit. Then we have the processing, which is what happens when you actually submit a page. And then we also have shared components. So let me just go back into the rendering tree, and I'm just going to select both the start date and the end date because I want to change the format mask on both of those. Going across to the middle pane here, we have a layout, which is a representation of the screen. And then down the bottom, I have the ability to, I can see regions, items, and buttons. And I can just drag and drop any of these from this gallery here up into my layout view. I also have a component view. I'll see messages if there's any errors or warnings. I can do a search, and then I can also see the help. So I'm just going to click on the help because I want to see that. And then down in the right-hand pane, you'll see the property editor. And the property editor allows me to change all the attributes for whatever's been selected, in this case 2 items. So I'm just going to use the select list here, and I want to change the format mask to be this one here. And then I'm going to save this change. Now, as soon as I make that save, it's actually saving the changes as metadata in the Oracle database. And so I can now run this immediately and see the changes that I've made. And you'll see that these are now date formats, which is much better for me. So this is what's called an interactive report, and it provides a number of key capabilities. I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes very quickly changing the way that this data is displayed to show you some of the things that you can do. One of the things I love to do is computational column. So I'm going to just do budget versus cost, and I'll give it a format mask. And you'll see here in my list of columns, I want budget, which is I minus H for cost. Apply that. And then it's defined this additional column for me. I can see that some are negative, so I'm quickly going to do a highlight here. Oops, under format, highlight. And these ones are over budget. Give it a yellow color, select my budget versus cost, and then just put an operator of less than 0 and apply that. And now I can see any of those that are over budget. I can do all sorts of filters. I can actually go and change the columns. So if I don't want to see, for example, the dates on this particular one, then I can move those out of the way. And so I'm just seeing the other data that I've got defined. I can do all sorts of ordering, etc. as well. When I'm happy with the way that it's done, I can actually go and save this report. So because I'm a developer, I can actually change either the primary report, or I can create an alternative report. So I'm just going to call this one over budget and apply that. And so now whenever any users come in, they will see this alternative report that I defined. I'm just going to reset my report. But when they come in, they will see this primary report, but at any time they can go and see this one that I defined. You can also save either private reports or public reports. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go and add a calendar in so I can see those dates on a calendar. So I'm just going back into the development environment, back to see all my different pages, and I'm going to create a new page. And I'll click on calendar, and I'll give this a page name. I'll just call it calendar. And yes, I want a breadcrumb. Go next. I do want a navigation menu entry. Again, I'll call it calendar. So just click next. And all I need to do now is select the table that I want to utilize. And we have a choice. Instead of using just local tables, you can also define REST-enabled SQL, or you can use web sources as well. But I just want to use the local database for this one. Click on next. And then it's simply a matter of selecting what columns I want to utilize. So I want to display the task name. It's already selected the start date for me. I want this to be duration based, so I'm going to select the end date and simply click on create. And here's my calendar, and I can just go and run this page and see what that looks like. And you can see that I've got all my events coming through. This looks great. The only thing I'd like to do now is actually link this through to the form that I saw before from the spreadsheets to be able to edit these. So I'm simply going to use the developer toolbar again, click on edit page 5, and then under the attributes for that calendar, I'm simply going to go down here and define a link. So I want to select a page in this application, and it's going to be this page 3 here. And then I need to actually set up the ID for that calendar, for the task that's selected, and I'll send over the ID from the calendar. And then I just want to clear the cache on page 3 to make sure it clears off anything that was already there, and click on OK. And that's as simple as that. So what you've seen is I've done a lot of work in a very short period of time, and I've done very little coding. Instead, all I've been doing is defining the table that I want, and then defining things like a link. And now I can run this. And now when I click on one of these, you'll see that it brings up that page where I can update any of the records here. And if I select a different one here, for example, complete plan, you'll see again that it's bringing up the record that I've got selected. So what started out life as a simple spreadsheet, I've improved it to add a calendar. I've got a single source of truth. I've also got a dashboard here, which shows me how many projects, the statuses, and what the different statuses are, who's actually been assigned to different tasks, etc. And so all that information went from the spreadsheet to a fully fledged application very quickly. So now, one of the things that was in here was, if I go into one of these records here, you'll see that I have a free format text here for status. And I don't want that. Instead, I want my end users to be only able to put in the statuses that I define. So I'm going to cancel out of here, and I'm going to, in fact, sorry, I'll just go back into there. Again, I'm going to use my developer toolbar, so it goes back into Page Designer. And what I want to do is I want to go down to the status item here, and instead of a text field, I want to change this to a select list. And you'll see that it's popped up a message here telling me that I need to define the list of values type. So I'll go down here. Now I can define a list of values that I can use on multiple pages. I can use a SQL query. I can use static values or PL SQL. I'm just going to use a SQL query for this one. And I'm going to bring up the code editor here. So I'm going to select the job that I want to display. Oh, sorry. I want to select the status that I want to display, and the status is what I want to return from my table, so from spreadsheet. And then I just want to order by the first column. And I can actually validate that that's good SQL. Click on OK, and then I can save this. Now, because of the fact it's a modal page, I actually need to go back into my browser directly here, and I'm just going to refresh my page, and I'll bring this up again. And you'll see that this is now a select list rather than a free format text, but I've messed this up. So I haven't quite got this right. And this is what's so good about Apex, is how quickly I can iterate my development and improve my application before I actually deliver it out to my end users. So I'm just going to put a distinct in there. I don't want to display extra values, and I'm just going to say select status. Okay, save that. Again, go back to my runtime, refresh my page again, and now let's go and look at one of these records. And now you'll see that I can only change it to one of the allowed statuses that I have in the table. So for example, I might want this one to be open. So, way that you can go from a spreadsheet, create an application, iterate your application. Now I'd do a few more things. I'd actually move the calendar up here. I'd give it a nice icon, things like that. But primarily, I'd also add it to this list here so I can see it on the home page. But I'm very close to being ready to roll it out to my end users to start utilizing. Now I'd like to change tack a little and show you what else is available within the Apex Builder. So I've shown you a bit about the application builder itself, which is where you'll spend the most of your time. Here you can actually go and create new applications. You can import an application. There's various workspace utilities as well. The next major section is SQL Workshop. And in here you have an object browser. So you can see any of your database objects. So for example, here's that table that I created called spreadsheet. Here's all the columns in the table. I can go and see the data that's in that table. I can even go and see things like constraints and triggers, etc. Or I can change to any of the other tables that I have available. I can also see other database objects such as views, indexes, sequences, and so on. And in fact, if I want to, I can create new database objects. So if I wanted to create a new table or view, etc., then I could walk through the wizard and, give it a name, start putting in column types, etc., and then create database objects. The key reason that we have SQL Workshop within Apex is so that you can actually, as an application developer, you can maintain all of the database objects, because if you're in a cloud environment or hosted environment, then often you won't have direct access to the underlying schemas, and you won't be able to go and create database objects with tools such as SQL Developer that you would normally use. The next option in here is SQL commands. So I can run any command in here. So for example, I'll select asterisk from emp and I'll run that. And you can see my results down here. I can also do explain plan. I can look at history of commands and things like that. We also have SQL scripts. So you'll see that I've got a few different scripts in here. Here's one I created to drop some database objects that I had in my schema that I wanted to get rid of. Here's another one that was creating some tables and what have you. And so, you can put anything you like in these scripts, DDL, DML, whatever it is you need, and then you can run them and then actually see the results. So if I go back, you'll see that I've actually run these, and I can actually go and check out the results of these. So let me go and have a look in here. And you can see that I ran this back in June, and I can view the results. So this one processed 234 statements, 228 were successful, and there was 6 with errors because it was trying to drop tables that didn't exist. I can also create an app directly from these scripts if you like as well. The next one, one other feature that I'd like to, so if you could turn off your videos, please, it'd be appreciated. One other quick thing that's available here is Quick SQL. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here, but this is a way to be able to define new table structures. So I'm just going to go and grab one of the samples here. So I'm going to grab this model here, and what this is allowing me to do is to actually define different tables. And as you can see, it creates a SQL statement for me based on the indentation. So for example, on this one, if I wanted to make customers a child of products there, I just need to indent it, and then I indent the columns. And then you'll see that it's actually creating a foreign key constraint for me. And that's now a child table. Customers is now a child table of products, but I didn't have to remember the full syntax. It makes it very quick and easy to create tables and views and define various things You can see here, for example, we've defined a check constraint. It's also inserting, in this case, some data. So you can see that it's inserting 10 records here. And if I scroll down, you'll see it's also doing triggers to populate things like the ID columns. It's creating indexes. Here's the view that's defined. And then it's actually putting in some sample data, which is very useful when you first create tables, so you can see some records in the reports and things like that. The next thing I'd like to do is just quickly touch on utilities. In here we have a data workshop, and this is where you can upload data from and download data. So you can load data from text, XML, or in fact from a spreadsheet. You can load it directly into a table, either a new table or an existing table, and you can unload data to either text or XML. We also have Query Builder, which is designed for people who aren't familiar with writing SQL, who want to join multiple tables. Quick SQL, which I just covered. Sample data sets, which allows you to go and create some tables, and in the next version, in fact, you'll be able to create a fully functioning application directly from these. And if I just quickly click on these, you'll see that some of these will create a number of different tables with some good sample data that you can use just to play around with and build some applications on. There's a number of other utilities as well. Things such as generate DDL. So if you created a number of database objects, you can generate scripts that you can then use to build those database objects into your test and production environments. Things like user interface defaults and various other utilities. The last option here is RESTful services, and you should be using the ORDS-based RESTful services. You'll see that I don't have this schema registered, but you can actually go and register a schema and then define endpoints that you can use and use the URIs in other applications. The next major section is team development. And this is designed for project teams that are building large applications with Apex. We use this internally with our Apex development team. We have things like milestones. You can define features and associate them with milestones. To-dos are basically minor tasks that you're doing within features. You've also got bugs that you can define, and then you can also review feedback through here. The last section is packaged apps, and packaged apps is broken up into two major areas. There's a productivity applications, and all of these can be installed in a couple of minutes, and they provide you with a lot of out-of-the-box functionality for point solutions. So for example, you might want to track customers, so you can install Customer Tracker here. Simply go and click on the install. As I said, it will take about 2 minutes. There's also a number of sample applications, and these are designed to show off specific functionality, such as our reports, charts, there's calendar samples and that sort of thing. So these are very useful for learning how to do some more advanced development. Install one of these samples, see exactly the code underneath to see how we've developed that. With the productivity applications, I didn't mention that by default they're locked, but you can actually unlock them if you want to see exactly how we've developed them. In their locked state, they're fully supported by Oracle, so if you have any issues, you can also log a service request on any issues that you find with those as well. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back into the application builder very quickly, and I'm going to create a new application. So this application, I'm just going to click on new application here. And so this one's going to be on the good old emp and dep tables. And I'm just going to leave the appearance alone, and I'm simply going to go and add pages. So I want to add a report on employees, and I'm just going to go and select my table. So my emp table, I want to include the form, and I've got a dep node there and a manager. So for the manager, I actually want to select the employee name, and for the department, I want to select the department name, add that page in. and then I'm going to add another page in, and this one I'm going to do an interactive grid. Interactive grid is much like a spreadsheet, but it's purely web-based. So I'm just going to select depth there, add that page, and again I'm going to select all of my features, and that's about it. Oh, in fact, I'll go and add a dashboard page while I'm here. So when you're adding a dashboard page, by default, it has 4 charts, and if you don't actually define anything, then it will just be based on sample data. But we can go and do things like, I'm going to select my emp table here, and then I want to do a salary. In fact, sorry, I want to do job, and then I want to do a sum of salary. So I'll call this total salary per job, and I want that as a bar chart. Go to the second one, and I'll again select the employees table. This time I'm just going to do a manager and account, and I'm going to do employees per manager, and I'll simply add the page. Doesn't matter that I haven't done all 4. I actually want to move that dashboard up under the home page, so I'll just drag it up and create the application. So whether you're building on top of existing tables or you're starting from a spreadsheet, you'll see that it's very quick and easy to develop your first application. It comes with a number of built-in capabilities. So let me just go and run this application, put in my correct credentials, and here's my dashboard. So it's showing me the total salary, it's showing me this. It's got these 2 charts here. I can easily go in and change those. If I go and have a look at the employees, you can see that it's actually put in the manager's name and the department. And if I click on one of these, it's already defined for me a select list for the departments and a select list for the managers. So I don't even have to do any of that. And next, what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to change this very quickly so that I can only enter commission if this person's a salesman. So the first thing I want to do is actually put a select list on the salesman, which is very quick. You've seen me do that once before. So I'm just going to edit the page, select my job, go to select list, go down, and I'll put in a SQL query. And again, I'm just going to do a little bit of SQL here. So just putting in the job. This is from the emp table, and then order it by 1, the first column. Again, I like to check that's good. And then I'll save this and run it, and just check that it's what I want. I need to go back in here, run it once more. Okay, so now I have a select list here. So what I want to do is I want to work off this select list, and if it's not equal to salesman, then I want to disable this commission field. So again, I'm going to edit my page. So I go into development, runtime, development, backwards and forwards. And all I'm going to do is right click on the job here and create what's called a dynamic action. A dynamic action allows me to define client-side processing declaratively. So I'm going to call this one commission for salesmen only. And I've already got in here that it's the job. And so my condition is when an item equals a value. I'm just going to type in salesman there. And then all I need to do is define what actions I'm going to do. So in this case, instead of show, I want to enable. And then I want to enable an item. And I'm simply going to select my commission field. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd also like to do the reverse of that. So I'd actually also like to do the opposite action. So if it's not equal to salesman, it disables it. So I've put in everything I need there. Go back to employees, refresh my page, and I'm just going to select a manager here. And you'll notice that my commission field is disabled. If I change that to salesman, now I can type something in. If I change it back to something else, you'll see it's disabled again. And so that's now taken this application up a step further so that I can only enter in correct values when it's a salesman. By the way, these are defined as number fields. So if I actually try and save that, then it'll tell me that it must be numeric. So I have to put in a numeric value, and then it allows me to save it. So you'll see that with the ability to build on existing tables, I started off with a very simple application. I'm now iterating it to make it more robust. I'm putting in things like this select list. I've now made it so that the commission can only be entered when appropriate. And the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to know where that department is. So again, I'm going to edit the page. I'm going to go back to my layout here. And what I want is I want a display only item. And I'm just going to drag it up, and I want it right next to the department field. And so you'll see that it's created this item for me. I'm going to call this one location. Okay, it's got a label of location. I'm just going to go down here, and instead of a database column, I'm just going to set that to null because of the fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to define one more dynamic action, this time on the department field. So I'm going to call this one get location. And it's whenever the department changes, I want this to fire. And what I want to do is I want to use what's called set value. And I have a number of different options. I can either do a static assignment, JavaScript, but I just want to use a SQL statement. So again, a very small SQL snippet. So I want to select the location from the department. Now this is where I need to tie in to the department number from the screen. So where the depno equals, and then a colon to identify my item, P4 underscore depno. Okay, so let me just check that. And doesn't like that column there. Let me change that. It should be LOC. That's better. Then the only other thing I need to do is actually submit that item, the department number, so that it can utilize that within the dynamic action. And I'm going to save this. There's a message. Oh, I need to tell it what it's going to affect. And it's going to affect my new location item. Now I can save it, go back to my runtime, refresh this page. And then if I click on here, you'll see that sales is in Chicago. If I go to operations, that's in Boston. And what the Apex engine has done is it's actually implemented JavaScript to initiate the call out, and then it's doing an Ajax call back to the database to run that little SQL snippet to determine the location based on the department. And you can see that it's not actually doing any sort of page submission or anything. It's doing this from the client side. So you can see how powerful you can make an application very quickly. So with that, I'd like to turn it over now to the questions. So I'm going to open it up to Mark. And if you'd like to relay the first questions to me, please, Mark. And you're still muted, Mark. Okay, I'll unmute you. Okay, oops, sorry. I clicked that button too many times. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Awesome, thank you. All right, cool. Yeah, so there are a number of questions on the chat. Some have already been answered, but let me just highlight a few. There were some questions on authentication, specifically authentication with Microsoft Single Sign-On and SAML, SAML.
Sure. Okay, so Within an application, I didn't really go into the shared components, but there's a number of different shared components. There's things like application items, processes, etc. This is where the list you'll use for your navigation menu, navigation bar. But the question was specifically about authentication. And this is also in shared components because it's something you'll use across your whole application. And you'll see at the moment that it's using application express authentication. So that would mean that I would need to define additional users within my workspace, end users or developers, so that they can run the application. But I can also go and create new authentication schemes. And I can go in here and you'll see that there's a number of built-in schemes that I can utilize. So if one of our pre-built schemes isn't what you need, then you can define a custom authentication. You can use database accounts, which to be honest is rarely used except for customers that have been using a lot of forms applications. One of the HTTP header variable authentication is very useful for being able to integrate with things like Oracle Access Manager and things like that. You can also define LDAP directory. So you can see, for example, if I select LDAP directory, that you need to specify a number of different attributes to tie that up properly. You can also use open door credentials, which you might use while you're testing it out. You can use application server single sign-on, which we use very extensively internally. So we have an internal hosted instance called apex.oraclecorp.com where developers can very quickly and easily just use the single sign-on so that anybody with Oracle credentials, with internal Oracle credentials can sign into their application. And then we also have social sign-in. And this is where you can change, you can use things like OAuth 2 or Google or Facebook to connect to your applications. So you have a number of different capabilities there as to how you define your authentication. And we don't have time to go into that in great depth, but yes, you can utilize LDAP, you can utilize various other single sign-on capabilities. The other thing I'd like to quickly mention in that realm is, as well as being able to set up your authentication, you can very easily set up authorizations. So you can use various different ways to define what sort of users have admin rights or contributor rights, reader rights, etc. And that can include, checking on LDAP groups, etc. Next question mark. Okay, you're muted. I don't know why you keep muting. I'll unmute you again.
I don't know. Anyhow, there was another question. Well, I guess first things for the authentication answer. Joel posted a link to a document that talks about authentication for Microsoft single sign-on. So anyone interested in that, that link is in the chat. The next question was about whether we have any plans to support themes for the builder to have like a different look for the Apex builder.
So we are looking at different capabilities. There's nothing confirmed for our next major release. We're currently working on Apex 18.2, which is basically a number of patches and small enhancements, and it will not be included in 18.2 for our next major release. We haven't fully defined all the features that will be in there, but that's something that we are looking at. One of the things I'd just like to do while you're asking the next question is go to apex.oracle.com. This is the key site where you can find all sorts of great information. Under platform here, you can look at our low code. You can look at all of our different features. I just touched on some of those today. You can also look at the architecture, deployment, etc. Under solutions, you can look at various use cases, success stories, etc. And then under learn, there's a great link here called Getting Started. Requesting a free workspace is how you actually go about signing up for a workspace on apex.oracle.com. Here's our download link. There's links to other services. And then there's things like videos on uploading a spreadsheet, more details on using Quick SQL, and then also on developing and deploying applications. So there's some of the key sites. Under community here, you'll find events and community resources. And I'm just going to go there and go to Apex World just to quickly show you that site. And here's the latest. It's been coming in on the Slack interface, and you can actually go and get an invite to join that community. Here's the latest news. There's lots of different job offers up available from here. See where different meetings and training is being provided. There's also things like plugins that you can extend out Apex with. There's also even a fan shop. So, you know, you can get a Apex mug or umbrella even. And then here's the latest tweets that are coming in. So this is one on one of the internal apps that's just been delivered, built using Apex for Oracle volunteers. Next question, Mark.
All right, there's just one coming in on eBusiness Suite integration. Anything new and new integration features with Apex and EBS release 12X? That seems to be up your alley.
So I actually wrote a integration paper on integrating EBS with Apex, and that paper is a few years old now. I'm actually working with the EBS development team on a revised white paper, and we're doing some testing at the moment. But the current white paper does actually hold for 12.1 and also 12.2. And, you know, it's important that you follow the recommended architecture that's provided in that white paper, because of the fact that's a fully supported and certified way to extend out EBS.
All right, thank you. Then there was a little bit of a discussion going on PWA applications, progressive web applications. I think the point there was just asking in general about mobile, how you go about building mobile apps with.
Sure. So one of the things brings up a great point is when we're building these applications, they're built using what's called the universal theme, and this theme is fully responsive. So if I make this screen smaller, you'll see that it's actually adjusting the size of these. And if I make it the size of a small cell phone, then you'll see that the menus disappeared, but all the content's still being displayed. Even if I go into the dashboard, you'll see that the charts are still being easy to view and what have you. And within Apex itself, you can actually build mobile specific types of components. So if I quickly go back and I create page, then if I go into a report, for example, then you've got the ability to use things like a column toggle report or a reflow report, or in fact a list view, which are very popular ways to build a user interface that's suitable for mobile. So rather than building a separate application, as we used to do with older versions of Apex, now you utilize the same desktop theme with universal theme here, and you can build mobile type pages very quickly and easily. And the great thing is then the user's just got one URL that they can utilize. So just to prove that further, I'm just going to quickly, while you're asking the next question, go and install the sample projects application, which has got some good examples of that. So next question, Mark.
There was a question about the spreadsheet upload wizard, which was a little bit specific, but maybe you could talk a little bit about the differences between the spreadsheet upload that you've shown as part of your demo versus spreadsheet upload wizard that you can use in your own applications.
Okay, so within an application, you can actually go in, and I'm just going to go into this one. So just before I go there, this app's already installed, so I'm quickly going to log in. And in fact, let me just go to developer tools. So I can actually switch this over to a mobile, and I'm just going to go to the mobile user interface, and I'm just going to, you'll see that this is in portrait or landscape, and we've got a list view here. If we go and look at the team members, then we're using cards here, but under projects, for example, then this is what's called a column toggle report. And I'm just going to change it from an iPad to an iPhone X. And you'll see that there's a lot less columns in here that are available. If I go to landscape, that's a better view. I'm just going to change my columns here. I don't want to see the completed date, but I do want to see when it was last updated. So I can add that in. And then when I go over here, I'm seeing the columns that I've got selected. And so this is showing off a mobile application. Again, this is a list view, goes down to our forms. And so you can see you can use these very readily on a mobile device. Now, the important thing is these are not native applications. These are running through the browser on your mobile device. So the question was about being able to allow end users to upload a spreadsheet into an application. So we actually have, if I go in here, I'll just go into this spreadsheet application will do. We actually have a wizard to allow you to do data loading. And basically, you can give a definition, tell them what table you're going to load into. So I'll just call this upload spreadsheet will do. Select my table. Okay, there's my spreadsheet table. So the column that's going to be unique is going to be my project and my task. So I'm going to go next. And here I can actually define transformation rules. So for example, if I need to make sure that the assigned to is uppercase or something like that, you know, I can say to uppercase because of the fact that's the way I need it in my upload. Then next, I can actually define lookups so that I can actually go and look up, for example, if someone's putting in a department name, or instead of a department number, I could do a lookup for that. Continuing through the wizard very quickly here. And there's the tables it's going to create for me. Sure, I want a navigation menu entry called data loading. And that's all fine. Oops, I need to specify a page. So we'll go back to the home page for both of those. And so now if I run this, then I'm gonna wait for it to come up. I've just created this data loading page where I can actually copy an end user now can copy and paste data into here and load it into an existing table.
All right, excellent. Thank you. I think it's almost time. So I guess one more question. There was a question about which versions of database are supported by Apex 18.1, specifically about database 12.1, but maybe you can talk about what database versions we are supporting with our latest release.
Sure. So Apex 18.1 is supported with Oracle Database 11i and above. So 11i, 12.1, 12.2, basically with any Oracle database above 11gr2 is supported with Oracle Apex. So remember that when you install Apex, you're installing it into the Oracle database. So you must be utilizing an Oracle database. However, you can define things like RESTful web services and so if you've got other databases that can emit REST APIs, then you can utilize those to build applications on. If you're using Oracle REST Data Services or ORDS, then you can utilize our REST-enabled SQL to actually talk to or retrieve data from other Oracle databases, which is much better than using things like database links.
All right, excellent. I think it's time. So thank you very much for your demo and your presentation and answering the questions.
And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this Apex Office Hours. And please sign up for Office Hours so you get notified of our next sessions. And in fact, in 2 weeks, we'll have another beginner session. And in 2 Apex Office Hours, which is in approximately 6 weeks, we'll have another beginner session, which will build on what we've been talking about today and show you yet more capabilities. So thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy your day.